threshold beyond which seeker is required that we can put?
Yeah,
in?
there's a whole bunch of thresholds, and that,
Right.
the law doesn't need to be rehashed here, but
Right.
I'm just saying, it's a very subjective statement. A lot of developers
I
understand
think
it
would
as
be
a cost of
clearer
doing
if
business.
it spoke to the fact that
And
it's building more than 500
It's viewed by the,
units.
maybe
Right.
viewed by the real
Right.
estate community that way, but I mean, that it doesn't say that here.
Right, so let's use our time to
Yeah.
frame questions.
Yeah, so
I
that's
want to get into
my
debates.
response to that would be that we should be much more specific about who views it that way, rather than saying that it's like, you
Okay,
know,
that's,
our
so-
official line on that.
okay. The next thing is on
Wait, Vinny has
streamlining.
a question.
What rising taxes are we referring to?
Property taxes?
Where are they rising? They're not rising in Kingston. They've been flat for the last 4 years. The
So
rates have gone down and the
specific-
levy has been
Be more,
flat.
be more specific.
why don't we let's frame questions so we can capture questions for the document. And so how would you frame that question? You said it at
What
first.
taxes are right? So the answer was that rising property taxes, but I don't think that's a true statement.
Okay.
So,
Mine was also a question. I said be more specific in my notes.
Right, school crowding, for example, we're losing school-age children.
And it contradicts what was said earlier about there being a negative trend in terms of population in Kingston,
Right.
kind of.
Well, not really, because I think we're not growing numbers-wise, but we are getting younger.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Not getting older?
Actually, yeah, we're against the trend in New York.
Page 7. I also, so right under there is
Streamlining.
streamlining, and under streamlining, so there's the added language there that was added in response to my question, because I was asking about the streamlined review process that has made approval process easier and has eliminated significant costs. Now, the answer
Right here.
specifically answered that the planning department reference, so it says that,
So I'm gonna read it.
okay,
So since the 2012 AI, which is the other, the fair housing,
Analysis of impediments to fair housing.
the city of Kingston has made a concentrated effort to coordinate its various departments and ensure open communication to help with the efficiency of the approval process. The city undertook a GEIS, the Generic Environmental Impact Statement, for the Rondout area, which will allow for a streamlined developmental process, approval process. It has also created 2 documents, Kingston 2025, a plan for the city of Kingston in 2016, our comprehensive plan, and the Downtown Revitalization Initiative of 2018, which outlines goals, recommendations, and zoning changes to be implemented to help streamline the approval process and advocate for more multifamily and especially affordable housing
These
projects.
are the recommended changes to this paragraph?
right,
well, these
these
were
are
the-
the changes that were
The-
suggested
I
as a
see.
response to my question
I
about
see.
for clarification.
Okay.
So that, a couple of things there is that they talked about specifically, so the City of Kingston Planning Department has removed many local barriers to reducing affordable housing. I asked about that. It says a streamlined review process has made the approval process easier and has eliminated significant costs. That was what was in it. And so then there were 2 different additions. One was about specifically what that department did. Since 2012, since the 2012 AI, analysis of impediments, the City of Kingston has made concentrated effort to coordinate its various departments and ensure open communication to help the efficiency of the approval process. And then separately, the city undertook a GEIS, that's in regards to the secret part, for the Rondo area, which will allow for a streamlined development process, approval process. It has also created 2 documents, and then it talks about the 2 documents, which outline goals, recommendations, and zoning changes to be implemented to help streamline the approval process and advocate for more multifamily and especially affordable housing processes. So actually, there's 3 different things. The GEIS was something that was recommended in the 2012 Fair Housing Plan, the generic environmental impact statement. So
Are you
Yeah.
saying it shouldn't be in here because it was recommended in the 2012?
Well, no, I'm just explaining what that is.
Okay.
So there were those 3 different points that were the response. It's clarification that was added.
About streamlined.
Yeah, do people have thoughts on that, given the clarification? Because now it's a little more clear as to what they're talking about. And then the next step, I guess, would be to have comments regarding that. Is there a way to put that
Yeah, put it in.
put it up there so we can see it?
Was anything addressed, was the eliminated significant costs addressed at all? Did I miss something there?
That's in the seeker review.
No, that's
No,
just in
that's
general.
saying that that's part of this
Oh, I'm sorry.
streamlined review process.
It has
Has made the
eliminated.
approval processes easier and has eliminated significant costs. And I'm just interested in knowing what those significant costs would be. Because they're not outlined.
So that's a question. Can we put that in? So I'd like to keep moving, so let's get these questions documented. That's a great question.
Then we can go.
And as a reminder, this is a Google Doc. It's going to be available to the public. And the public will be able to shape their comments too as we go forward, and anything that you'd like to change or fix or what have you. So we're about, well,
But I'm glad you flagged this because I think this section still requires some tweaking in general
Yeah.
because of the way it
and it
characterizes
comes back a couple, it's
the
the.
functional, yeah.
Right. Okay. Tanya, is that appropriate? Are you satisfied with that?
For now, yeah, then I think then comments would be added to this with that
Yeah.
clarification, yeah.
Great, let's keep going. Is that? And I've circled that too, because of course I'm very concerned about this section. 72, let's see. Okay, so there's now additional obstacles to meeting underserved needs. That includes a lack of adequate facilities that support services to low-income individuals and families, including those that are homeless or at risk of being homeless.
Just before we, sorry about, so there's the changes, or the added text that the consultant came back from my questions with. Is there a way that we can share that with people? And then, are there any other significant changes or additions that we should know about when looking at the document based on other people's questions?
If anything significant was changed, I would let you know. I have the red line document, and nothing in that section has been changed yet.
Actually, what Brennan has said though is that there's a new version of the plan that's being uploaded tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So we'll be able to also have that.
And I'm
right?
gonna load it with the redlining so you see what was changed from the draft that was posted.
Great.
Or
That's-
maybe I'll leave both of them up there,
Okay,
revised.
that would be helpful.
Okay.
So other items, lack of funding for programs that provide services to low-income individuals and families. Lack of funding to address the need for public infrastructure replacement and improvement. Need for local business development capital that will help businesses create jobs for low-income individuals. Lack of capital to fund direct loans to developers. Credit market and equity market problems
Can that be more specific?
here.
Yeah.
Doing that one too here. High construction costs, lack of suitable building sites, and high land costs.
They're very general. It seems like the consultant, could be a little bit more specific about how that plays out here and how, so we can understand the dynamics better.
What would the question be?
So the question is, for example, let's just go back to high construction costs. If I were a professor, I would give them a D for that statement. Because you want to say something like, and I am, by the way, I would say something like, I would ask them to say something like, explain how high construction costs are different here or affecting the situation here, because construction costs are high everywhere.
Okay.
So relative to what,
Okay,
is the question.
okay.
So that we can understand when we look at this, how to
Development
address the
costs are
problem.
high, compared to what?
Right, so like, how,
Can we go back to that
or
page?
what the result of that is, so that we can address that problem as we understand it. Right, are you agreeing?
Yeah, I agree.
And that would be true for any one of these statements, like lack of suitable building sites. I know there's a lot of space for infill. Think about AVR, which didn't get built, or, you know, a number of other sites that are suitable for development. High land costs, actually, they're relatively cheap compared to certain places for the infrastructure that we have. So it just seems to me like they're kind of looking at it from 30,000 feet and not saying what that means to us.
Yeah, I think lack of capital and credit market equity, that needs to be expanded. Coming from that industry, I don't understand where there's a lack of capital and what are the credit market and equity market problems that are being referred to?
Right.
So would it be appropriate to ask the question, these items here are, is lacking compared to what? Like what?
Right, so context.
Be more specific.
Be more specific. Okay, great.
By which,
Thank you. Can we move on?
yeah.
Non-housing community development assets. So this section describes the economic and workforce needs and assets of the city of Kingston.
And these are all from,
So from the 2009, 2013 ACS workers,
okay.
2013 longitudinal,
Longitudinal.
thank you, employer, household dynamics, jobs.
Can you explain to me what workers versus jobs are?
You can do a search on American Community Surveys for specific criteria.
How can we have education and healthcare services? I mean, I assume that workers are people who want jobs in this field, and jobs is the number of jobs we actually have.
Well, number of jobs is what's available, and the number of people employed in those jobs is the number of workers.
Right, so there's an employment and an occupational index, and they're different.
How can we have 2,670 workers in the education and healthcare services field and 4,300 jobs? Do we have nearly 2,000 unfilled jobs in the city?
It's possible, it's probable. I mean, it's budgetary. I mean, there could be, like in the school district, there could be positions that are not filled because it's not in the budget, but they're not getting rid of them. Like in the city budget, you know, a position might not be.
That's a huge
Could they
discrepancy.
be filled by people outside the community?
I'm sorry?
Could I live in Woodstock and fill one of these jobs and not have it show up as a worker, but they would show up?
No, it would be,
It would still be here.
it would be shown in the number of workers, no matter where you live. If you're working in that field in this jurisdiction, it would be shown there.
This table seems to show that we don't have any kind of job problem here because we got more jobs than workers.
We
Except for-
don't have a super big job problem. We have a workforce development problem. We need to train people for the jobs that are available.
Okay.
Wow.
Does this reflect anything with youth employment?
I'm sorry?
Youth employment?
I don't think it breaks it out. It's just total employees.
Evelyn, did you want to frame a question?
I guess if some of these jobs that don't have workers are jobs that are like on the shelf because the employers don't have a budget to fill them, it seems like they shouldn't be in this table because it kind of implies that there's overall 1,000 jobs waiting to be filled in the city, which seems hard to believe.
Yeah.
Is this a HUD and table?
It's American Community Services American Community Survey data table, yes.
From 10 years ago?
From 2009 to 2013.
Oh, 5 years ago.
Well, no, there are more recent American community surveys, so.
The problem is, so, and I think Jennifer will back me up on this, when you do certain searches for more detailed data, you can't find some data, so you can't compare 2016 data to 2013 data, so you have to go back to where you have a full set of data to make comparisons.
Okay.
So American Community Surveys data might have more information about specific criteria for 2016 or 17, but they won't for all of the criteria that need to be reported here, and in order to make real comparisons, the data sets have to be the same.
Rebecca, is there any discussion on the next pages about what this
I was looking for
table
that.
means? Just, it's really hard to understand how to interpret it the way it is.
Yes.
I'm with whoever's questioning that data. Can we go back to that schedule that showed I guess my question would be, how can we have 27.5%, 5-6% unemployment?
No, it's youth unemployment, young workers unemployment. It's not total.
So the unemployment rate for young workers is exceedingly high at 27.56%, making it difficult for the city to be considered a desirable place to live and raise a family for young people.
But I look at the total, but it's
So-
really hard for me to relate that to the chart, which I know is total and not youth. But there's 8,744 workers, including youth, I would assume, for 9,800, almost 9,900 jobs. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It's a mismatch, maybe?
Well, the last sentence of that paragraph is business leaders have identified workforce training as a critical need of the business community. If more people were trained for the jobs that are available, that those two numbers would be more equal.
I think it would be, just based on what I'm hearing you say, it would be interesting to see them separated, like what are the jobs and what are the available jobs that could be,
I don't think, that data might not be available.
okay,
But we certainly ask the question, please, because,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's 0 for public administration.
That's interesting.
yeah, that's weird. Who am I?
Yeah, that's a little weird.
All right, let's keep going, reframing these questions.
That's great.
And if you want to come back, Vin, if you have I think we captured your questions so far. I think we've got it, and, yeah, okay. Actually, I don't know if we did. I'm still trying to understand your
Well,
question.
let's keep going and see
Okay.
if there's anything that explains it.
Okay, so based on the business activity table above, what are the major employment sectors within your jurisdiction? According to the business you know what, maybe what it is it's in the, at the end here,
Yeah.
in the discussion.
Yeah.
So in the discussion, there are numerous strategic opportunities available in the city of Kingston. The city of Kingston is uniquely poised to harness the economic and cultural potential of the New York City metro area and what we would argue are the finest natural environmental assets in the county. Kingston is steeped in the country, thank you. Kingston is steeped in rich historical traditions. Uptown Kingston was the first capital of New York State with notable assets like the Old Dutch Church, the Senate House, original stone houses, and Victorian era, colonial revival styles of architecture. I don't know if this is answering our question.
We're talking about occupational categories.
Newly installed waterfront walkway, et cetera, the relatively affordable commercial, blah, blah, blah. Like many upstate New York cities, Midtown Kingston, the city's center, has experienced a sustained period of decline characterized by a significantly higher level of poverty, for the residents of that neighborhood. High commercial vacancy, residential commercial disinvestment, and the real and perceived concentration of crime are among the issues which has put a damper on economic development activity.
So could you just ask that they add to this discussion something explaining what the jobs and workers data means and any context they can provide that might explain what the differences between those numbers are?
Great. Yes, great question. Does that satisfy everyone who has the same question? Concerns? Okay.
Also, I believe, if they get their data from the census and from the Department of Labor and so on, the innovation index, which looks at occupational trends, if the data are federal, can those be utilized here? I'm just trying to understand what that
If the data is
discrepancy.
federal, can it be applied here?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll write that into the document so we can keep going.
Okay, great.
They do touch on it a little bit, but it should be elaborated. It, in the paragraph, if you go back a little bit, titled, "How do the skills and education of the current workforce correspond to employment opportunities in the jurisdiction?" 42% of employment opportunities are currently in education and healthcare services. The skills related to this occupational sector demand technical education and college degrees for higher paying opportunities. The tables above show that 10% of individuals aged 18 and over have not attained a high school diploma, the basic requirement for all but the lowest level service position. So slightly more than 20% of the adult population has a bachelor's degree or higher. So it talks about in another section, I can't find it now, about the need for workforce training to fill those higher skilled jobs that are available, but we don't have the workforce with the skills to fill them. But it should be elaborated
That's
more.
gonna become
And clearer.
a huge problem too. It's not gonna get better. So needs and market analysis discussion. Are there areas where households with multiple housing problems are concentrated?
Here's one report.
This is about zombie properties. Are there any areas in the jurisdiction where racial or ethnic minorities or low-income families are concentrated?
Oh,
Can we
yeah,
read the
for
answer
sure.
to that?
The census tracts within the Midtown Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy area are among the poorest and highest percentage minority populations within the city of Kingston. Within census tract 9520, 46% of the population is minority, and within tract 9521, 50% of the population is minority. Sorry? What are the characteristics of the market in these areas, neighborhoods? The number of individuals renting exceeds the number of owner-occupied housing units. A significant percentage of the employment in Kingston is based in the service sector of that period. Of that sector, health and social services related employment is the greatest category. Education and government, public administration are also key employment areas for Kingston residents. Are there any community assets in these areas, neighborhoods? There are numerous community service providers and other assets located within the Midtown Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy area, including the Andy Murphy Neighborhood Center, George Washington Elementary School, the Kingston Midtown Arts District, and Radio Kingston and the library. That's one of the areas where was not. Yeah, Jenny?
I just want to mention that 9517, which is downtown, also has a significant amount of displacement poverty, and it's an environmental justice area, meaning it meets all the characteristics of
Potential.
It meets all the characteristics of that 95, 20, and 21 have in terms of threats of displacement and minority populations, and housing insecurity. So I would like them to add 9517 to this discussion. If you look at the mapping of displacement and housing insecurity and low income, it includes 9517.
Okay, great. You got that? Thank you, Jen. So are there other strategic opportunities in any of these areas? In reviewing current studies and input received from public meetings and hearings, online surveys, public demand for significant revitalization of this neighborhood is identified. The long-term scope of work includes streetscaping of Franklin and Henry Streets, cities working to implement a walkable and accessible neighborhood, strategy through numerous projects, the Midtown Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy area is also targeted for open space improvements and increased access to healthy food for its residents. In addition, there is a significant need for additional housing units and improved housing conditions. These improvements were also identified in the survey responses during previous studies of the area. Yeah, Vin?
Are economic development opportunities discussed elsewhere?
Yeah,
So the strategic plan overview?
Just a quick thing that could be noted too, I mean, part of the whole, the library should be mentioned in the second part too, because part of the streetscaping there
Oh, yeah.
has clearly, I mean, it's a big improvement. Yeah, no more chain link fence,
Yeah.
you know?
that was CDBG funded, or partially CDBG funded, so.
Yeah. No, it was definitely a much more inviting thing than
Yeah.
saying keep out of the library, yeah. No, that's cool.
Oh dear.
What funding are we
So
gonna
the
get?
strategic plan overview?
What funding are we gonna get?
So I'm gonna keep
Like
moving.
amphitheater, community space, yeah.
So foster a positive business climate in Kingston, promote the city as a desirable place to live, work, and visit. We got a question there. Let's go up to the
We
top.
already asked for clarification about what a
Yeah.
positive business plan is.
That was the
Okay.
question.
Super.
Reduction of slum blight conditions in targeted neighborhoods.
Also, that was the terminology.
Yeah.
Yep. I just kept highlighting it wherever
I
it
know,
popped up.
it's very repetitive.
Yeah. Good, that was exactly the question too. Geographic priorities.
Oh, this one was here.
We had a highlight here, most grocery shopping today is made at supermarkets or box operations. Neither of these types of establishments is found in the Midtown area at this time. For health and other reasons, fresh produce and locally grown products are playing an increasing role in changing lifestyles in this country.
So I actually highlighted that one because, so the answer to needing fresh produce has been stated here as the answer would be put some big box stores over here. Do I understand that correctly?
No, I don't think they're suggesting that. I'm saying that there's not sufficient access to fresh food.
But then why does it say most grocery shopping today is made?
I think it's too general a statement for the city of Kingston and should be amended, yes.
Okay.
I think it should call out, Hannaford Uptown, and that's basically the only supermarket in the city, and so it's challenging to get there for some people, and while urban agriculture, meets some of the need, it doesn't meet all of the need for fresh food in Midtown and downtown.
And there's also the idea of, so what page are we on? That's on,
It's on
please go
page
back to that.
85.
Okay, so identify the needs of this target area. So it talks about, it's a general statement that the grocery shopping is made at supermarkets and big box operations, but it's made at supermarkets and big box operations because that's all, well, in Kingston, are we saying that those are the only options that we're gonna be looking at, supermarkets
No,
or
she
big
just
box?
said that needs to be changed in the language.
So
So we'll
how
have-
are we figuring that, how are you thinking that it would stay instead? I guess I'm not clear because there's no mention of corner stores or And you mentioned urban agriculture, but what about things that are a little more realistic or widely used for urban areas, smaller?
I agree, and that should be changed.
So
yeah.
that sort of thing, like
Mhm.
more options than just those two options is what you're saying should be put there.
In general, access to fresh food in Midtown and downtown needs to be addressed by whatever means possible.
Okay,
All of the above.
right, and not just pigeonhole it into those two
Correct.
things as an answer. Okay.
But right now, the only real opportunity for fresh food is Hannaford, or if people are able to access the urban agriculture opportunities in the city.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's,
farmer's market.
Right. But, yeah.
these types are found in Midtown, okay.
Isn't there still that place near UPAC?
Yeah.
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 Not everybody goes there, not everybody may be able to
So is your
afford to buy it when it's
question in here
fresh and
that you want
available.
to see
Yeah.
more
It's just
of
accessibility,
the
that's
realistic?
not
It
there.
doesn't seem like there doesn't seem to be a reason to have that sentence, most grocery shopping today has made it supermarkets or.
No, I'm saying to take that out.
So,
Yeah.
Take that out.
so let's make sure that's notated as a question.
Okay.
Okay. Include specific housing and commercial characteristics of this target area. Hi, welcome. Thank you.
Brenna, I see that you quoted from they quoted from the study that we did on the vacant land in this page. And I was just wondering if there, because I haven't gotten to read it, whether there was some discussion about targeting investments in mixed, in housing, new housing, new construction.
Tell me where you're talking about right now?
So on this page, you have, you took the data that we gave you for the cultural arts mapping project and talked about all that vacant land that's in Midtown from the former industrial uses.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if there will be some kind of statement about targeting incentives or targeting funds somehow to, like, if there's some discussion about that, like.
So this is asking for the characteristics of this target area. It's not asking for solutions in that.
Okay,
Actually, a couple of places down, it says what are the opportunities for improvement in this target area. It could be added there.
yeah, I mean, at least think, a discussion of why you're talking about it and what might be recommended, what we recommended, for example.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna reiterate a question that's been asked, which is that it looks like, and maybe later it comes in, that the target area is Midtown, but also including or considering the Rondout part of,
It's citywide.
it's citywide.
We can spend CDBG funds anywhere in the city as long as it is primarily benefiting low to moderate income residents of the city.
Perfect.
We're trying to designate a neighborhood revitalization strategy area in Midtown, which could potentially allow us to exceed our 15% programs and services cap, as long as we're focusing the funds in that neighborhood revitalization strategy area. So there are assets and needs downtown, certainly.
But that's why
But the
Midtown
focus
is
area is in
focused.
Midtown because that's primarily where most of the programs and services benefiting low to moderate income residents of the city are performed, so we can exceed that cap if we are approved for that NERSA.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And that would limit it to Midtown, the funding would go towards.
No, it would not. We could still fund things outside of the city, but if we got to a point in our debate about who is going to be funded, and we chose to exceed that 15% cap, as long as it was focused in the Midtown area, we could do that.
I just want to make sure that the implication is not that we're trying to put poor, just low-income housing only in Midtown. but then-
No, it's not, it has nothing to do with
No, I
housing, it
know.
has to do with programs and services.
Right, no, I just meant in terms of like, having it be a target area, that the idea of fair housing and a healthy housing mix and all the other recommendations for making all neighborhoods mixed, rather
Certainly.
than, Midtown focus of low-income housing. just wanna make sure that the language, I know this is a big question, that the language is clear, that we're not just trying to target low-income housing into Midtown.
Well, that would also be a zoning thing, wouldn't it? It wouldn't be.
It would be anywhere, I mean, it would be anywhere, because obviously that's against the Fair Housing Act.
So the question would be,
What?
will the NERSA restrict housing development to low-income housing in the Midtown area? And can we ensure that it doesn't in various
Right,
ways
that it-
indicated by
That it
the...
ensures a healthy housing mix or incentives for market rate and
yeah.
low-income.
Right, right.
Great. So priority needs, here's the summary. And three, well,
No, that's a
You have
different,
different-
it's a different page thing.
No, I need three.
Okay, yeah.
yeah, we're making our way. Okay, standing up like that?
I've been sitting all day. I was sitting down.
Okay.
I'll sit down again, thank you.
So we still have another third left. Do we want to talk about what people could do who might have to go?
In a few minutes.
Okay.
In SP 30 influence and marketing commissions, there was this flag, Energy Square, Landmark Place, are in the planning phase, but they're in the construction phase. Anticipated resources. If appropriate, describe publicly owned land or property located within the jurisdiction that may be used to address the needs identified in the plan. And the discussion, so there are two areas that are open here that don't have numbers.
Oh, that's because in the past, we've created this plan with an estimate amount and submitted it for review and then gone back and revised the numbers. HUD released a notice to say, don't submit the plan until you have actual numbers for your annual action plan.
Okay.
So that's why those were empty, because we didn't
They have
know
to be
until April
actual.
15th, yeah.
Okay. Institutional delivery structure. Goal summary. Goal descriptions includes affordable housing assistance, youth and community services. Okay, so if I'm gonna, so it's 9:15, and I know everybody's tired, I know it's a little warm, but I want to give you a couple of options as we wrap it up. I could go through the remaining of the document here. We're ending at page 113 for now, to look at the things that have been submitted to be highlighted, to discuss. We can take that on for the moment to get through our highlighted items, which aren't that many. What I'm going to do as a follow-up is I'm going to create a note to everybody who's here, I know most of you, and also make it available to the public to say where we left off, so that you're able to start where we've left off to review the document if you haven't. And you'll have access to this Google document. It'll be made public. You'll be able to comment, not to change text. That'll be the way it is so that the whole community can look at it. And then we can just accept comments and implement everything to make a clean document. Thank you to the City of Kingston for giving us extra time to do this work. I think it's really important. This is a great exercise. It's been fun, and I appreciate you all here. Or we could just stop here and I can put together that document for everyone, or we could just finish up our highlighted text. What would you prefer? That's a lot. Who wants to review the remaining text? Highlighted text?
Highlighted text. Sure.
How many we got?
Who wants me to give a surprise presentation about housing in Greece and Lebanon and how it could relate to Kingston?
What?
Who wants to hear me give a surprise presentation about housing in Greece and Lebanon
That'd be
and
great.
how it could relate to Kingston?
Can we do it after this 10 minutes?
Absolutely.
That'd actually be interesting.
If you're interested, I don't know why, it's coincidence that I'm here.
Okay. So
I'm in
let's,
this field, so.
thank you, no, thanks for coming. I'm gonna run through, and anybody who would like to leave may, but I'd like to just honor the comments that I received today.
But either way, you're suggesting that people, if they had to leave, and those who did leave,
They will
would still
follow
give
on.
input
Yeah.
to the Google Doc, right?
That's what I'm saying. Brenna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I don't know what we would have done if you weren't here.
And
Right.
obviously, we'll address the comments.
Yeah.
If you have questions tonight, email them to me. I'll get to them
No.
as soon as I can.
You get some rest.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you.
Brenna.
Thank you very much, 'cause that
Thank
really
you.
was,
I'm
So
glad-
helpful.
eye-opening, yeah.
Glad to be
because I
here.
know-
You just set us all on the right
Felt a lot less
path.
lost.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll finish up. So on page 115, the city will also continue to foster a supportive environment for the creation of affordable housing with its creation of the zoning task force to develop new zoning regulations that will provide for additional opportunities for multifamily and affordable housing developments. I am not sure who submitted that, but I think it might have been Marissa. Jeffrey, thank you. Also dishes, if you have dishes, you can put them in the sink, we'll wash them.
So what is the question about this?
This was highlighted and whoever had suggested it, I don't think it's here.
Set aside and waivers. So is there anything in here
Yeah, if you
about
want
reserving
more, just
the
message me.
20% set aside in terms of?
Going back to what, can you frame the question?
In terms of removing barriers to affordable housing and to creation of affordable housing, what can be done to preserve a 20% set aside for affordable housing development in the future for housing?
So there was talk about zoning changes, and then they talked about how there's a set aside of 10%, I think, in specific
Yeah, they were
areas.
reducing it from 20 to 10 in the comp plan.
In the comp plan or the comp plan zoning?
No, in the comp plan.
So the comp plan says 10%, not 20%.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it was that or the committee, I don't know. I think it-
So how do we frame the question? Is there a discrepancy between the comp plan and?
The general set aside has been 20%.
So why are we moving toward a reduction?
Yeah.
The set aside has been 20% in specific areas or after over a certain size?
The set aside was in specific areas, the mixed use overlay district. The new plan, at least according to what they were talking about in the comp plan zoning committee, was to maybe broaden it and have 10% for all new units.
Wow.
Something like that. I
But
think the
that-
question is why, I think it's really like looking for more specifics on that, because I don't think that they ever came to any conclusion.
And with the comp plan zoning task force, the new task force, the mayor and committee talked about sort of starting over and not using what the comp plan zoning committee had suggested.
Okay.
Just starting from scratch, so going back to the comp plan itself, looking at that, and getting a new consultant to work on from that, so that's the thing to reference.
So then maybe the question is, basing it on a clearer set of needs, assessment of needs and fair housing standards or something along those lines. Because I don't think that the recommendations of the comp plan nor of the comp plan zoning committee took any of that information into account.
I think it's a great one.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Looking for the arrow, looking for the arrow. Right?
So that doesn't mean that those of us who go back to it wouldn't find things, but It's just things to look at, so.
That's it, everybody.
You should. And what about the housing, the other one?
Before, you say that again, Jenny? What?
The other plan?
We're not gonna do that tonight, obviously, so we'll send that, that's about 40 pages, and that's the fair housing. But there's more, yeah, and I think that with the extra time now, which is excellent, and with raised awareness,
Yeah.
we can have, I think the public will have a chance to, if they would like to, spend some time with the documents now. So before we wrap up, I wonder if anyone else has any other questions or thoughts to include inside of the question document before we break. Yep, Jenny?
I don't know how to frame it, but I asked it at the beginning, which is whether the narrative can discuss the questions of displacement and caused by the short-term rental market, which is significant. And I know that it's mentioned somewhere in there, but I didn't see short-term rentals mentioned at all. So displacement, sorry, I didn't see it mentioned there at all. Displacement and gentrification as a result of rising house prices, the increasing youth market, people moving up with families, and those trends, whether they can recommend interim measures. I don't know whether they can, whether that's what this report is about. I don't know.
Okay,
So I know I'm a little tired now, but.
that's okay, we're recording everything too.
But that's a huge item, and it's not on the list of problems identified, but the short-term rentals market is definitely
Yep.
pushing up prices.
Anyone else? Sebastian? A-okay?
I mean, just generally, there are weird capitalizations everywhere. Don't capitalize random things, come on. Script, format, stick to it.
Yep.
Also, well, I have a question. If the data, I know we're just like using old data to get money basically, but like if the data is so flawed and weird, like with the work, the job one, like should that just be totally stricken from the thing? Like the data's not accurate?
I think that what I heard earlier and what we can reflect on when we actually have the video is that it seems like because we're an entitlement community, that we are getting this money, based on, I mean, it seems like it's been going down every year, is what Brenda was saying in the beginning, and then it's going back up. So the data, even though it's confusing and it's not up to date, it's creating the baseline just to get the money here. This pot of money here. And then we allocate it the way we allocate it based on applications that are submitted around those 9 goals that the city has, right? So it's strange, and I think the concerning part though is how does the context of the strategy of the plan impact other things that are local? Like if we're stating things in this document that are to appease HUD, who's not paying that much attention to Kingston, what are the implications of what's here in other ways? Like why are we commenting on secretness? Why are we talking about? There are things in here that don't, it's like what's going on? So it's kind of a little bit of both things happening, and I hope that this is a step for the community to start thinking about that more closely and keep asking those questions to shape this stuff, to have it be more reflective of the community, even if it doesn't impact, or maybe it does impact. Another thing that came up was if the numbers are off, could we be getting more money? Are we under?
And Brenda
Cutting
said
ourselves.
we could submit comments at any time, not every 5 years, but like.
Every year.
Every year. Shouldn't this be revised completely with new census data?
This wouldn't, because the strategic plan is a 5-year plan, so it's capturing a point in time. The yearly
Annual action plan.
Annual action plan is something, yes, different. I don't know how they work together, yeah.
I would have a bizarre, simplified question, but do we, is this thing created off a template that we started
Yes.
with, or did the city basically
No,
construct
it's
this?
HUD's template.
So there is a template that we are
This is
required to
HUD's
follow
language, yeah.
in
Yeah.
It's
order
like a
to?
giant
I mean, it's
grant
not just about the
Yeah,
specifics
that's
of some of this language, it's about the
Mm.
format and the kind of information that needs to be in it in order to be successful.
As I understand it, we're going to get the entire money anyway. I don't really understand the, yeah, but, it's a template that we're amending to form into a reflection of the community.
That's right, though, it's like a giant grant application in a way.
It reminds me of.
Pro forma.
Because in all, and this is not a complaint, this is simply an observation, there's an enormous amount of language in here that doesn't really speak specifically to anything. It makes kind of generalized statements about a situation without necessarily any supportive data and no real suggestions about how to make it better.
So one of the problems could be the
I wonder
consultant.
what it's actually for.
You could start there, and consulting, how is the consultant, like what was the RFP, how does this work? How does a consultant get hired? What sort of a consultant are we paying to do this? Is there a better, we're paying someone, who's a consultant hired to do this? And that's who's working. So that's a good question, because how the city makes that decision is something maybe we need to catch as we go forward. Who is being hired to do the work, and
I'm gonna get on Google and say the 10 most successful
Yeah.
petitions for HUD support in the country for cities under 30,000 and see what comes up.
yeah, that would be really helpful.
I'd be interested in seeing, if they're formatted differently, how much of this setup is mandatory and how much of it is truly optional.
Most of it is mandatory, but there are, as I think it's worth flagging, where there are kind of subjective statements is what you're saying, right?
Contradict.
I mean, it's all I would have said, I would have shot my hand up every other paragraph, I mean, I just didn't do it. I didn't know, in fact, if it was language that was installed from the last version and,
Yeah.
I also think they're missing populations, back like on page 69 and 70, where they're talking about the housing needs of special populations. There were the formerly incarcerated or people being released. And then there's also people, we don't have any housing in Kingston for people who are active drug users. So like a wet house model, we don't have that in Kingston. So if someone is actively using, they're refused housing. And so that's a lot of the street homeless.
That was right in there too. It says, it talks about the vouchers and how qualified, you have to meet some standards, and people who have drug abuse, who are sex offenders, previous or have a record, please, will not qualify.
So are you saying that we should have more of a plan for,
I'm feeling like that should be listed as one of the needs.
listed as a need?
Yeah.
It's not listed as a need. Okay.
What do you just call it, a wet house?
It's what a wet house, because you don't have to be dry or silver.
To be,
Yeah, I know, it's a terrible, like,
No,
phrase
it's
for it.
it's okay, it's included in there.
Okay, I have to go.
Oh,
Yeah.
Meeting my mom.
Pretty big.
Thanks to those watching. I hope it was helpful. Hi Diane and Michelle Hirsch. We're going to wrap this up. There'll be a lot more discussion, we have more time. And we'll be making this information available to the public to
I like when I leave
participate.
them in there.
Have a good night.
Hey, thank you, this was great.
Bravo.
I'm Sayana, so nice to meet
It's so
you.
nice to meet you too.
I have to run also, I know we all have to run, but very nice to meet you all, thanks for having me. It's okay, I don't have time.